Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so happy to have you here today. We have the amazing John Berlet here. As you know, we have started the Investment Risk Advisor Mastermind to teach you, if you don't already know, how to put your checklist together so you can vet out properties so you can feel more confident in investing in real estate. So if you'd like to know more about that, please get in touch with me. Just go Peggy at the nesteggbuilder.com and let's set up an appointment. And to start, I always love to have these wonderful, out of my own book, Choose Happy, quotes. I like to pick things that are good for whoever our speaker is. And because John is building legacy for all the people who invest with him, I thought this would be good because it's called Leave a Legacy. And we love Zig Ziglar. Who doesn't love Zig? I'm sorry, he's not here with us anymore. So accept what is, let go of what was, and have faith in what will be. So that's great. So John has been around, I don't know, I've known John, what, maybe 5, 6 years now. And I met John who was getting ready to
Right.
build a resort down close to I don't know if you call it the beach or the shore in Texas. And he's still got that under his hat, so to speak. And he's now off into and has been for not quite a year of finding tax deeds and having people get cash flow because we think cash flow is really great. It takes a while to build that up, and he just told me that his first distribution's coming up. So that's really, really exciting. And Matt Murphy is here, and Adrian Ricard is here. So thank you very much for coming. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And John, take it away, and we're going to ask you, after you take it away, we're going to ask you some questions. And I've always got two or three. So thank you
And
for
I
being
recall
here.
your questions are pretty tough questions, so I look forward to being up to the task today. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining in. I'm in Rockport, Texas, which is just north of Corpus Christi, about 25 miles along the Gulf Coast of Mexico. Anyway, I have a financial planning firm in Austin that I sold my book of business in 2021 to a law firm out of Michigan, gave me a chunk of money for my client base, basically. And so my niche, my background was retirement income planning, tax planning, Roth conversions, and I used something called fixed indexed annuities. They're nothing fancy. They're very safe instruments for. They're suitable for some of everybody's money, the money you don't want to risk. Anyway, so income planning, tax planning, I have been buying property at tax sales for a little over 30 years now.
Hmm.
In my very first tax sale in Travis County, which is Austin, Texas, in 1993. And believe it or not, when I went there, I read an article in the local paper that told me they were going to have a sale, that the Japanese had bought like 500 properties in the Texas Hill Country, and they were going to be selling the auction because they were having difficulties in the 90s in Japan. So there was only two of us at this first sale I went to, myself and an attorney, very sage old real estate attorney in Austin named Walter Winlet, who since passed away. And he told me, he said, whenever you bid, I won't bid. And if I bid, you don't bid. I said, okay. So we bought everything at opening bid. There was 13 properties. I bought three and he bought 10. Now today I know that's not allowed. It's called collusion. And 30 years ago in Texas, I was young and dumb like everybody is when they're young. And I didn't know any better. I guess it was called collusion back then. But anyway, we bought some really successful. I bought three properties, one for 1,100 and some change, sold it for 38,000. And those are not my best buys. In my offering portal, you'll see I've got some examples of properties we bought and sold over the years, and my securities attorneys advised me not to put the biggest home runs on there, so they're not on that list. Anyway, so I sold my business. That resulted in a capital gain event and I began to do a deep dive in that new capital gain tax incentive called opportunity zones. And it's like a 1031 on steroids. If you're not familiar with opportunity zones, they're going to soon end. They come out of the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act, um, and have it's a way for private equity to invest and help develop Blythe communities and look at opportunities that they might have otherwise overlooked. So anyway, I had a capital gain, significant gain that I decided I'd learn all I could. I bought a motorhome. My wife and I traveled 17 states looking at these opportunity zones. And every state has them. If you're not up to speed on it, that's something of interest to you. It's like a 1031 exchange, and a Roth IRA got married, and they had a little kid named Oz, opportunity zone, because it's a tax play if you stay in the investment for 10 years. So I ended up buying an old hotel resort in Rockport where I landed. And Rockport's a bit of an anomaly when you think of Blythe communities. We're really a tourist destination if you're not familiar with Rockport. The bulk of the property owners are second homeowners who report their incomes where they have their primary residence, either San Antonio, Austin, Houston, or the Hill Country. So it's kind of an anomaly when you think of opportunity zones. It really struck out to me as a great place. So I ended up deploying my capital gains and started that fund. And I kind of stubbed my toe. I have no background in development, no background in hospitality. And then Peggy, you and I talked about how challenging the last year and the last 2 years have been for a new ground up development. So we put that on hold, and it made me really think what I really know best. And I know annuities really well, income planning, Roth conversions, cash balance pension plans, but I had a no compete where I wasn't allowed to compete in that space for a certain number of years. So it made me think, look back into tax deeds, because I've had some great successes and I always had a passion for real estate. So when I started my research this time last year, actually, I found out that in Texas, they're going to online auctions, and they're kind of slow behind the curve on that. We have 254 counties in Texas, and still less than 25% of them have online auctions. For the most 75%, you have to go to the courthouse steps at 10 a.m. the first Tuesday of the month. So it kind of limits your capacity. You can only be in one county at 10 a.m. at first Tuesday of the month. And by the way, next Tuesday is a tax day for Texas, and I'll be bidding in 13 counties. I have 4 managing partners who actually have skin in the game. They put between 25 and 50,000 in the startup, and they go and look at these properties on the company's behalf and will bid at the live auction. I'm looking at the properties that have online auctions, and so I can next Tuesday I'll be right here where I am now at my laptop bidding on properties. So our business model, and if you're not familiar with tax deeds, and very few people are, Texas is unique. It's very investor friendly. Every state has either tax lien auctions or tax deed sales. And then there's 5 states that have a hybrid, like Texas. Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Connecticut, and Hawaii are very similar in how they work. And here's how it works in Texas. When you're the high bidder at the auction, you get a sheriff's deed within 3 weeks once it takes time to record the deed at the courthouse steps. So we're the new owner day one, subject to the prior owner's right of redemption. Now, let me back up. We're the new owners. We have all the right, title, and interest the prior owner had. And if there's a mortgage or any type of lien on the property, they're extinguished, wiped out, with the exception of the IRS and something called weed liens, or I call them weed liens. It's when the municipality has to mow the property and they put a lien on it. That survives the auction. But as far as mortgages and other things, the only thing that you have to be cautious of is IRS liens and weed liens, I call them. Anyway, municipal liens. junk car if they had to do a demolition on the property. So well, the way it works in Texas, for everybody's benefit, is the prior owner has a 6-month right of redemption, 180 days. And if they do redeem the property, they have to pay us what we paid plus a flat 25% penalty. That doesn't matter if it's in the first month or the 6th month. Where in essence, it turns out to be a 50% first year yield, effectively, if the property gets redeemed. We don't want to redeem. Well, I've bought over 60 properties and only 2 have been redeemed. So my niche and my specialty and our focus is really finding properties that are unlikely to be redeemed. Now, the other states that have lien auctions, barely do you own the property. Those states, they bid the interest rate, how much interest you want to, and they competitively bid it down. So I only had one experience in a lien state, and that's in Colorado. I bought 2 properties in 2020. I want to say 2020 or 21. And I didn't like the process at all. I got all my money back and a little interest, but it wasn't what I was used to as far as ownership. We're in this for equity and ownership. Now, and one thing that's really unique to Texas is our homestead laws. If the property has a homestead exemption or ag exempt, it's not a 180-day redemption, it's a 2-year right of redemption. So if the former property owner redeems the property, they have to pay us what we paid if it's in the 2nd year, plus a 50% penalty. And then a lot of people don't realize the statute allows us to maintain the property. So any money we spend for repairs, we can't really upgrade. Well, we can, but we don't get the penalty on if it was redeemed on anything you spend to upgrade the property. But if it's necessary to maintain, like we put a roof on, we bought a property, we started in May. We bought 10 properties so far in 2024. 2 of them were improvements. The other 8 were raw land, acreage, and that's my niche, is dirt. I really like dirt. So we don't bid in the larger markets. We never go to Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Dallas. We're in the tertiary markets where there's less competition, and that's kind of an overview. I'll take a pause here and see what questions anybody might have, if any. You're on mute, Peggy.
I have questions. Does anybody else have questions? I like to share. Oops, I'm hitting the wrong thing. Sorry. I had wanted to be able to see everybody.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes.
On the tax liens, every time I've done a deal in Texas, I buy properties. I've never bought a tax lien,
Deed.
tax deed. Every property I ever purchased, I just purchased the property. I had no rights to what's underneath the ground. It's the same thing with the tax deeds. They
Hey,
all,
that's a great question. Eugene?
yeah.
Yeah. Hey, let me tell you about answer that question. In August, we got extremely lucky. We got a windfall, a huge coup. We bought 15.6 acres in northeast Texas, near Shreveport on the Texas side. We got 15.6 acres, and unbeknownst to us, we paid $20,100 for 15 acres, heavily wooded with pine trees. We had no idea that 80% of the mineral rights had never been severed from the dirt. So we ended up getting the 80% of mineral rights. It had some old production on it from the 50s, pretty much played out. However, they came in there and did some fracking in the last year and a half, and there's 3 new horizontal gas wells in production, and we got our first royalty check on that property in December for the month of October. So I think that's what you're asking, what happened to the
Yeah,
mineral
that's what
rights?
I'm asking. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's rare. It's the exception to the rule. Hardly anybody even has the mineral rights anymore. But it may not be as rare as I'm thinking. What's happened is, and this happens to a lot of the properties we buy, we look for deceased property owners. And there are certain ways we find that, but a lot of heirs end up squabbling on who's going to pay their share, and they don't want to pay it if this guy's not going to pay and this paying. So it cures that problem in an unfavorable way to the property owner. But the fact of the matter is, the state law requires in Texas, if you don't pay your property taxes in 2 years, they'll typically bring litigation and sell the property. So the jurisdictions, the greedy jurisdictions, I should say, get their hands on their property taxes. Are
You. So
Eugene?
you bought, so Eugene, you bought a couple of properties on whatever the tax sale was, and did you hang
No,
on?
no, no. That's
You sell
just
them?
just general purchase. I've done about 4 or 5 deals, 3 deals in San Antonio, 2 deals in Dallas. Unbeknownst to me, this was years ago. Unbeknownst to me, you sign it on a paper, and then there's this little thing that basically said, I own the property, I own the land, I have no rights to what's underneath it.
Oh, yeah, well, it's the same in California.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, whatever ownership the prior owner had. In this case, when you buy a tax sale, if that prior owner had mineral rights, you get all their interest.
Okay.
Yeah, so in LA, it's called Doheny, I can't think it's gas and oil or oil company, and they used to pump, and they owed everybody that was on top of on top got a check. Now they stopped pumping years ago, so the checks have stopped, but all those people still have the rights to that cash flow if there's ever if they ever come up again and start
Is that
pumping.
pumping, what we call in Texas drilling?
Well, it's already drilled. It's been there for years, back in the
Oh,
20s.
operating.
Yeah, operating. It doesn't operate anymore.
Gotcha.
But everybody and when we bought the house from my husband's father, and when my husband's father bought the house, he didn't keep the mineral rights. He gave them to the seller.
Mhm.
Like, no, right? You
Yeah.
never give that up. You don't always take that.
Yep.
So
Live and learn.
yeah,
So,
so I do have a question.
okay.
So you're gonna go to a sale. Do you run property profiles on what's coming up so that you know whether you have, like, for instance, mineral rights, or if there's a IRS tax lien, or how do you prepare yourself to go to a sale is really the best question.
Okay. So here in Texas, we only get about a 2, possibly 3 week notice.
Mhm.
So you don't have a whole lot of time to do due diligence. Um, I told you I had a management team of 4 others, and we do some pretty basic preliminary stuff on the appraisal website, the tax office, and typically it'll list if it's a homestead exemption,
Mm,
and that's a starting place where we kind of skip over. If it's got a homestead, we're not interested. However, we bought 2 properties this first round, and one of them was homesteaded, and we ended up negotiating with that owner. We bought her right of redemption from her, because remember, it's 2 years on a homestead. Turns out this lady had moved across the street with her father, and she'd left the house like 7 years ago and had no desire to maintain it. So we haven't demoed it yet, but we're gonna have to we ended up buying it for the dirt. And I spent about $2,000. We bought it for 13,000 and some change. I spent another 2,000 engineers cleaning up, just to determine that we couldn't save the foundation. But
mm.
that had a homestead, that was my point. But we ended up buying her, gave her $250. She signed away her right of redemption to us.
Okay, and she can't come back at
No,
all because of
but let me
that.
mention, there's another interesting subject along these lines in Texas. Okay, so that's what I know most.
Yep.
Although we bought one in Oklahoma. Texas, I told you there's a 180 day, 6 month redemption if it's not homestead or ag exempt. Now, you have trouble getting a title policy when you go to sell the property. I mean, I could sell it immediately, day one, but nobody's going to give us close to market value unless we can convey a title policy. So there's this, title companies are very cautious, as everybody in real estate knows. They will not issue a policy typically, some will, but for the most part, until 12 months have passed from the day of the sale. Because unnamed heirs, somebody can come out of the woodworks and say they were never notified of the lawsuit, and they are able to make a claim and possibly redeem the property. So I wanted to throw that out there, that's kind of a little caveat you have to be aware of. But back to your question, we start with just the tax office, look at the market value, how many years are back delinquent taxes, what the owner's address is, who's getting the notices. Then I get a copy of the suit, find out who's been served. I'm really looking, again, for deceased owners.
Ah. And will it show that they're deceased?
No, but other, you can, like white pages and other
Yeah, you could Google their name.
skip tracing portals.
Oh, yeah, skip tracing too.
Mhm.
Yeah, you could find a lot of obituaries on Google like that.
Yep.
Yeah, so you run a property, you do oh, and I thought the bid down was very interesting. That's not what you do in Texas, right? You bid up.
No, they bid up on the sale price. Where in lien states, about half the states are deed states, half are liens. And there's an association, a nonprofit association I'm a member of called the National Tax Lien Association. Very strong organization. I recommend everybody check them out if you're interested in this space. I went to their annual conference a year ago in February, and the name is National Tax Lien Association. Most of their members are lien players out of New York, New Jersey, kind of hedge fund type operators. And they're strictly an interest play. Rarely, they told me about 5% of the time they end up owning the property. So they're an interest play, and they're in pretty strong. They're in the same interest position as the jurisdictions, the schools, the counties, and the cities. So they're pretty safe interest play. But again, Texas is a deed state and a hybrid deed state at that, where we're my track record is over 95% ownership and 5% gets redeemed.
So what did the title companies say that they won't issue a policy? You've got proof you've purchased it. Is it because of the redemption period?
Right. Their concern is if an unnamed heir to the property was not served notice during the litigation, then they can come back and say they were not served notice, and they can redeem. Now we get our money back. They have to pay us what we paid plus 25% penalty. So we don't have much risk. But a title company, I've had one company here recently that will insure and take exception to the redemption period.
Oh, that's good. Well, they'll get more business, won't they?
Yeah, I just found out about them in November, and I'm working a deal. We have the other house that we bought for $23,000. We put in another $35,000, roof, floor, kitchen, bath, paint, deck. We spent some money right away, like in the first 3 months. Remember, there's a redemption period. And where was I going with that? Oh, so this one we're about to put on the market for $122,000. We've got about 55 or so in it. And this title company says I was planning on just selling owner finance with a 3 to 5 year balloon. But this title company is saying they can issue a title policy with the exception of the remainder of the redemption period, which now we bought it in May. So we only have 3 or 4 months left till we can get it.
Right, and it takes a couple months to close, so yeah, that'll be good for the owner. So, but that had a building on it, and and so you look for people that have died And that's why you have to deal with the redemption of the unnotified relationship.
Yeah. Well, these law firms, they're experts. There's one firm in Texas called Linebarger, Klein, two or three other names, and they've been doing this longer than 40, 50 years, and they represent at least half the county. So they have their systems, and I've been to their offices and looked through their lawsuit, the
Oh,
paperwork, and so I know that they do a pretty good job at notifying. But some people don't want to be found, believe it or not. We don't specifically look for deceased. We look for anything that we can buy at 20 cents on the dollar.
okay.
That's our target, 20 to 30
All right.
max.
Doesn't matter dead, alive, just don't want that homestead on it. Sure, that makes sense, because if you want to get, so you're, so you have this, you're buying tax deeds. Do you have like a schedule of, you're going to turn it in a certain period of time and then that brings in the cash flow? How does that part work for an investor? Let's talk about the important stuff. So for
Okay.
people who would like to invest, how do you have that set up for investors? Because I would think that tax deeds would cash flow, and you told me you've been doing this for 8 months and you're just doing your first distribution.
Yeah, we had our first profits to divvy out. Let me tell you how it works. We're a Reg CF offering, which stands for crowdfunding, if you're not familiar with it. You do not have to be accredited investor to participate. If you do invest, you get ownership, equity, interest in all the properties we've already bought, which is 10, and anything we buy between now and April. So this first round offering is going to close in April 25th, I believe it is. And we're offering our passive investor, used to be a minimum 2,000. We've raised it January 1st to 5,000. That's the minimum. We have some bonus member units incentives if you come in at 15,000, and some additional bonus if you come in at 50,000. But long story short, minimum is 5,000. We're paying a 12% preferred distribution, not a 12% interest. And the passive investors get 60% of the profits until they're made whole. The management team gets 40%, passive gets 60. Once you're break even, you're made whole, we go to 50-50 on the profits. So we have an incentive to get you whole sooner rather than later, which is why we're going to pay out this first distribution. So the first 12% before anything is paid out goes to the passive investor. It's an LLC, so you get member units, not shares.
Right.
So many units anyway.
And a K1, correct?
K1s.
Okay.
So we didn't have any in 2024. So that we have a portal, a broker-dealer portal. All the investors must invest through our broker-dealer portal. And I'll give you that domain. It's called invest.coretaxdeeds.com. And that's Silicon Prairie is our broker-dealer platform. All of our disclosures are on there, the Form C, our audited financials, everything's on this offering portal. If you did invest, you must go through this portal. They take a 5% commission and give us 95% of your investment. So 100% of your investment gets a 12% preferred return. And then you get 48%, we get 40. Once you're made whole, then you total 50-50. So the 12% pref is what I find a lot of people find confusing. And let me clarify, it's not an interest percentage. It's
Right.
If we have $10,000 profits to distribute, then 1,200 of that is divvied up between the passive investors. And then we divvy up 4,800 of that 10,000 to the passive investors, and 40% or 4,000 of the 10,000 goes to myself and the management team.
So if I got cash flow, when you go to do the split, you deduct the cash flow I got, the 12% off of the 60%.
Yes.
because I haven't been made whole. But once all my money has been returned to me, I now get 50%, not just the 12%. I get the 50% when you do a distribution. Do I still get 12%?
No, once
Do
you're
I
married,
get cash flow?
yes, you
No,
own
I
fifty
still get
percent.
cash flow.
Yeah, you get 50% of all the profits on those properties that were acquired from day one, May, basically May of 2024 till April of 2025.
So I get cash. You don't have all the properties that you had. You sold some, correct?
This one.
You sold what? So what? So I'm just trying to understand how your fund works because you kind of like a fund here. So is the
Yeah.
idea of the fund to accumulate as much as possible?
Say it
And
again, I'm
that
sorry.
to it, are you trying to, because you said you go to a sale in a couple of weeks or next week or whatever, right? So that whatever you buy, let's say you find another 10 properties, that will go into that fund, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
everything we
So
buy.
there's no cash flow on any of these, correct?
No, we could possibly have some cash flow if we were to rent that house, for example.
Right, but let's stay, like, that will be a question. So now you have 10 more properties that have no cash flow. Now you're gonna look at those 10 properties and you're gonna figure out if they need to have some work done on them or not have work done on them. And do you need to hold them for the entire redemption period?
Ideally, that's the plan. We're gonna
Ideally,
hold,
okay, so you
yeah,
have to hold them for the 6 months for redemption. And you want to see if there's properties you could fix up and then resell at the better price. Now, all that money goes back into, let's say, so you've got that house you just fixed up, and let's say you sell it. All that money goes back into the fund.
correct.
Okay. Now, when do you do a distribution?
When do we do a distribution?
Yes.
Whenever we have profits, quarterly.
Oh, quarterly. Okay.
Yeah,
But if you don't have any, then you don't make a distribution.
correct,
Okay. So you have this one fund which people could still contribute to, correct? Because you've got
correct.
these 10 properties or whatever it is that you bid on that you want to pay for. Uh,
We purchased. We're the owner, and this fund is the owner, which any investor would come
right?
in and have member units of the fund, which is named core tax deeds.
Okay, that's the fund.
Did my screen
That's
pop
also the
up?
owner.
Is my screen up?
Yes, it is. You can
Can I
see.
walk through this with y'all?
Yeah, if that would be helpful.
Okay, so this is the portal I mentioned, invest.coreTaxDeeds, and I'm gonna go over this right side here. Uh,
Okay,
walk through this with you, okay? So far we have 8 investors on the passive side. We have
okay,
4 on the management side. It's a whole different company. It's called Tax Deed Investors. I'm the majority owner. I'm happy to share who the other 4 managed members are because they're important and they're very credible people. And I've
sure.
known them all over 25 years. And they all put up between 25 and 50,000. That's not included in this 152,000. So we have 8 passive investors. We call them deedsters. And this is our offering. Our goal is to raise 1.2 million. We're quite a bit short of that. It's Reg CF, equity 60/40 with a 12% pref. Do y'all see that?
Yes,
Okay. What's real important is these disclosures down here. Okay, so each unit valued at $10. Its minimum is just changed to 5,000. Our goal, we set up, if we didn't raise at least 50,000, we would refund that money to anybody and close the fund. So we met our goal. Our stretch goal is 1,200,000. Maximum we can raise under this offering is 5 million. We started April 9th. Target date, if we didn't raise that 50,000, we would close it down by the end of last year, which we made it. So this is the end date I mentioned earlier, April
Mhm.
5th, 2025. This form is the most important. This is required. by the SEC that you look at,
right?
like 90 pages. We have,
90 pages.
yeah.
SEC is ridiculous.
Yeah, and it tells you all the reasons why you wouldn't want to invest.
Mm-hmm.
These are our audited financials, blank subscription. This is how you actually subscribe. You click on that, fill it all out. This is our pitch deck, which is everything here on the left. This is kind of cool, this tiger mark. We pay a premium to have this insurance policy. You see where it says insurance policy?
Mm-hmm.
This protects our investors if we ever committed any kind of fraud or it's like a E&O type policy.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's cost us very affordable. It's like $90 a month, the premium. This is my background, tells you, a little bit about who I am, uh, what makes us different. This shows the different states. The orange ones are deed states, Connecticut and Hawaii, which is our next target destination. We're already talking about someone with boots on the ground with some major capital to get us launched in Hawaii because it's very similar to Texas. These other states, we don't have any desire to play in those spaces. Here's
Yeah,
our
no.
total investment strategy. This is more information, transparency. These are properties that I personally acquired before I started this fund. These are real properties, the purchase price, sold price, profits, crazy profits.
Yeah, nice.
Yep. And then this last page here shows what we currently own. And if any investors were to come in, they would have ownership interest in all these properties that we already own.
Mm.
And again, anything else we buy going forward until April.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So you're still paying distributions, but how do you have money coming in to pay those distributions?
Well, we sold one property.
Sold one property. Otherwise, you would not have a distribution. Is
Correct.
that correct? Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah.
That was the
It's our
big,
very first distribution. We had to buy properties first in order to be able to sell some.
sure, of course, makes total sense. So you
Mhm.
still, I know you said you like land. So tell me about the land. What do you do with the land? I heard about the 16 acres with, you've got the mineral rights, and so you've leased that land out to, or you've leased a portion of that land, I would guess, to a gas drill company, and they're paying you because you're the owner of the land. What
Well,
about the
actually,
other 16 acres?
let me explain that a little further because there was a lease already in place. There's a company operating
Oh,
in full operation,
and they didn't buy that back?
pumping. This is pumping. In fact, when it's heavily wooded with pine trees, number one. Number
Mm,
two, it's ready for thinning. They call it forestry. And I'm talking to some forest people
sure.
about that. And I was told by a neighbor that this land had not been thinned in the last 8 years, and so it was ready for thinning. There's also a lease, there's a sign that says a hunting lease, but I don't know anything about it yet. I haven't found anybody that's hunting on that property. And it's a long way from where I'm at. I've only been there twice. Anyway, what I wanted to say is there's one when I did go look at the property after the auction, I met a truck driver coming out of the gate, and he told me he's hauling 5 truckloads a day of salt water or salt something coming off of this gas. So it took me about 3 months to get in pay status with the operating company,
Sure.
and they call it a DO, some kind of DO. And I know nothing about mineral rights, but I'm learning very quickly. So I told you we got our first check in December, and it was for the month of October. We hadn't got January's check yet. And so where was I going with that? It could be I was an old well that the former owner, I talked to this former owner, by the way. I got a hold of him. And he's in your neighborhood. He's in LA. In a second, I'll tell you the name of that town he's in.
Yeah,
Well, he is in Rosamond. You heard of it?
yeah.
Have you? Okay. So he's out there, the black guy, in his late 70s, told me the whole story about, been in his property, in his family over 100 years.
And
He's in the hospital on his deathbed, and he's got 15 children all asking for money. So if I'm him, I'm going to do everything I can, beg, borrow, and steal to redeem that property. It's coming up February 7th. We bought it in August. So anyway, I'm trying to keep that on the down low.
So when you bought that property,
Yep.
were the leases recorded against the property?
When I bought the property, I had no idea there was any
Any
production.
leases at all? But that
No.
doesn't, you know who isn't protected on that is the lessee. The lessee should always record their leases against a property so that they're making a public statement that I have the right to enter this land, I have the right to pull out whatever it is, I have those rights. Anybody who has a lease,
You mean the operating company?
yeah, all the operating companies, all their leases should be recorded against the property so that they can't be kicked out because here's the lease that says I have the right.
What
I'm
I did was
doing
I
this
found,
business.
as soon as I got any wind of possibility, I hired a landman. And this landman is in that county, and he dug all through the deeds. He did a extreme amount of history of the deeds. All for 100 years, it's been in this family's name. He tracked all the transfers over from who to who to who and who got what when. And this was not their only property. They had 3 other properties.
And he didn't pay the taxes for years, for 2 years. It wasn't like he
Boy,
missed
and
it.
also he's telling me that he never got served notice, which I have a hard time believing.
Well, you
Uh,
know who to check with about that.
Pardon?
You know who to check with.
Yeah, the appraisal district, who sends the tax bill, they mailed it to the same address that I have for him. Anyway, it don't matter. They did what they legally need to do. They mailed notice, and he claimed he never got it until November. He said he got the notice in November, but the sale was in August.
And he didn't know that taxes were due.
So
Do you guys pay taxes? Like in California, we pay our taxes twice.
just once a year, we pay him January,
So you
sometimes.
pay the whole thing once a year.
Yep. And you get a little discount if you pay in December.
Oh, no, they
But the
don't give
penalty,
discounts.
that's
California
another.
doesn't give discounts.
Okay. Well, let me mention something else I've learned in this space. There's a lawsuit, a major lawsuit filed in Denton County, Texas, which is just north of Dallas.
Okay.
And the guy is he's suing the appraisal. He sued the appraisal district already, and he's taking it. He believes he has a federal case, and there was fraud going on at this appraisal district in Denton County, and it got heard at the state level, and he's gotten so in the weeds on this. He's traced it back to the schools. All these schools are building these ball fields and stadiums and massive schools, and they dictate to the taxing authorities the value, how much revenue they need. And the tax assessor office was found that they didn't use proven appraisal techniques. They were being mandated by the taxing jurisdictions. And if you don't know, Texas, our taxes have gone sky high, and the economy was down, and you compound that with the valuations on these properties, it's a great time to be in the tax deed.
I got that. Can you close your share?
Yes, I thought I did that.
No, it's quite open.
Okay.
It's just people can't see you when that's open unless they've
How
got
do I stop it?
How do you stop it? You go stop share.
Sounds easy enough. Click on share. I don't see the stop share option.
Be at the top.
Oh, wait a minute. Stop share. Here we go.
Okay, good. Just people can see you better when
Yeah.
like that. So, okay.
Shirley, we got some questions. Did Eugene left us?
Yeah, Eugene always has something. He leaves us early.
Okay.
I was just looking to see if Vanessa's under Kathy Scalzo's name. No, she didn't have, but I'd love to have Vanessa ask a question because she's 20 and she's learning, and it would be really great if she had a question for you. Or Mr. Murphy, if he has a question, or Lisa. Lisa is she rents her single families.
Airbnb, short term?
No, she does long-term rentals.
Got it. In
She doesn't want to do all that work. Thank you very much. Somebody else can let the renter clean the house, take care of it. And she does take care of the properties.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be back on your show.
Thank you.
Happy to have a further conversation with anybody who might have some further questions.
Okay. Yeah, you never know who's going to show up once it gets out on YouTube. So just ask them where they heard about you.
I sure will, Nancy.
Yeah, and if you send me some information, I could put some of that together and put it on our brochure and send that out.
Okay.
People might be interested in that. So tell me before we go, because do have a couple of minutes. Are you getting ready to create another fund for April? Is that what you're doing?
Yes, and we're not sure if it's going to be Reg D or we're kind of disappointed in the results from the Reg CF. Thought a lot more people would be interested and take the very low risk, $2,000, but it's not happening.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know enough about crowdfunding like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you should be asking
Probably
for
going to be
more
a lot
money.
smaller. In fact, one of my managing partners is a real estate attorney in Austin who's well connected, and he hates the Reg CF. And my security attorney doesn't like it. They were against it from the beginning. So we're going to.
That doesn't mean accredited investors can't invest.
Oh, yeah, they can. I have at least one that I know of the 8. There's probably there's 2 in there.
Is it because it's so low? I mean, lots of people are looking for low because they don't have a lot of money and they got to start somewhere. This is a really great place to stay. And this is why we started the risk advisor mastermind, because if people don't understand, they're not going to invest. And if they have a checklist, then they can ask those questions on their checklist. But a lot of people don't know what questions to put on a checklist.
Good point.
Like the questions I asked, all those questions, they're basically on my checklist. Like that's why I asked about that, because you said 48, you said 60, then you said 48. I'm like, okay, well, 60 because that's your split, but you deduct the cash flow from that split. Me,
Yeah.
I look at stuff like that and I want the 60 on top of my cash flow, but that's just me. When you get to a point where you could do that, you probably will do that, but you're at the beginning, so you're just not at that point yet, if that makes sense.
I think the next round will be a much more easier and successful because we have a track record. We have so many properties we bought, and we'll have so many sales. Hopefully the house.
Do you have to sell all those properties before April 5th?
No. We're going to try to hold. We don't want to hold long term, but we want to sell it like 70 to 80 cents on the dollar market value. So we're
Yeah.
price them in fact, we're going to offer them. This may have came from you. Somebody suggested this. We want to offer them at a 5% discount to our investors because they'll have intimate knowledge of the property before they market. Did that come from you, that suggestion?
That might have.
Okay.
I always believe in leaving a little on the table.
Yeah, but it makes sense because these investors know, our bases. They know they have some knowledge of the property, and some of them may want full exposure to that property in Texas.
Yeah, so they get some add value.
Mhm.
Right,
Yep.
so they can make their profit going in, which is really important. If you don't make your profit going in, what's the point of investing? Which unfortunately, we have too many people that do not understand that theory.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. Lisa, we're so happy you joined us this week. Vanessa, we're happy you joined us. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you
I
for
hope
having
you come
me.
back again.
I look forward to next time.